and I was just wondering if you could sort of go over, because I've always thought of it as like I do the sketch, and I guess I can kind of break that up in my head as sort of like the gesture and then the lines and the
Sure.
details. But then I always think of, and then I render it, and I've never been able to like break that up.
Yeah, sure. So the way that I think about it, and then I'll illustrate it or demonstrate it, is like you want to get to point A to point Z, right? And for most people, they have to do this, go through each letter of the alphabet, right? But I always thought, like, well, like if I know that the destination is Z, what are the parts that I can skip to get to Z faster, right? So point A would be like having nothing, right? So it's okay. Point A is like having nothing, and then like let's say like points. You know what? Let's use numbers because it'll be better. So if I said like 1 through 5, right? Like there's 5 steps to getting to the finish line, and so I always thought, okay, I get this. Like I get that you have to do steps. So then step 2 to step 3 to step 4, and then there's step 5, right? So then and this is arbitrary. It's an abstract idea of this concept. But for me, it would be like number 1 is just like having the idea. 2 is like line art. 3 is like breaking it apart the values, and 4 is like getting the materials to look good, and 5 would be color, right? Like the colored finished. And so then I was like, okay, but what's stopping me from having combined 2 things like 3 and 4? Because 2 is just helping it make me easier to do 3. So could I get to 3? But the problem with going to 3 without a design is that everything after is like a mess. So it's like, okay, well then I have to pretty much combine these 2 then, right? Like my design and my values. But then like the idea might not be there. So then I had to do all these 3. So then I realized that to be able to do this, I have to master each one of these at some level so that it becomes intuitive. Okay? And the way that I like to parallel this to is the way that we interact with the world on a constant level. Like if you and me, Steven, were out in the field, right? And we were just playing catch, and I threw a ball at you, and you're running to catch the ball, right? And you catch it, it's no big deal, right? And then we challenge ourselves, we go a little bit further, throw a little bit faster, right? It becomes fun. Just throwing a ball is fun, right? But if you've ever like raised a child, okay, which I don't know if you have, Stephen, but I'm sure you've been around children.
I have not.
You have not been around children? All right, cool. And so, no, I'm just kidding. I'm sure you have. But like, you get my point. It's just that children don't know how to, let's say, even run, right? Let alone catch the ball, let alone be coordinated to run and catch the ball. But like someone like you and I, granted, maybe that's not true for one of us. We can't run nor catch, right? But you get my point. Like the act of catching and throwing and all that stuff is actually pretty basic when you're an adult, right? But when you're a child, it actually isn't, But at some point, we're able to do all these different things. And so for me, I felt like that was possible with art. Because why wouldn't it be? Only if you think of art as some sort of abstract skill that you, or some, sorry, abstract talent that you either have or you don't. If you really believe that, then you're setting yourself up for disaster mentally. Which I know none of you guys think this, so you guys are fine. You guys will have some remnants of this, but you guys definitely don't have this at a higher level, So what does that then mean? Well, that means that whenever I'm painting, right, whatever it may be, I can do it subconsciously. Like I can do it at the level, unless I'm dealing with certain colors, but like I can do most of the stuff at a level where I can talk and we can conversate and I can like design. I can do multiple things all at once, right? And it's because I've learned how to run and catch the ball. Okay. And so to be able to do the stuff that I do, like I can give you the breakdown, like I could tell you what I do, like I get the shapes, right? I focus on the idea more than anything else, right? Like what it is that I am actually drawing. You know, that is all I care about at these early stages. I make choices that are based off of the aesthetic. Like, does it look good? Right? All on a subconscious level. Like the shapes themselves, that's all subconscious. But it's the idea that's conscious. So this will be like equivalent, like if I can, we're looking at the football or catching the ball analogy that I was using earlier, right? That would be like the equivalent of like practicing plays to then be prepared to play them at the game, you know? So when you're at the game, you're not worried about whether you're going to catch the ball. You are almost certain if the ball is there, you're catching it, right? What you're worried about is if the opponent is going to prevent you from catching the ball because you don't know how they're going to roll. That's where your cognitive mind is at, not anywhere else. That's why when athletes drop the ball, like especially when it's thrown right to them, it's devastating. You know, like maybe you and I, if we were to drop the ball, we're not professionals. Like we wouldn't be too mad about it. I mean, there are some people that get mad at it even they're not professional, like athletes. But you get what I'm saying. Like we wouldn't like stay up at night.
Yeah.
These athletes do because that's like all they've practiced. So it's like it's kind of like you only had one job, you know. But the way to get better at this is very much what I gave the other Alex, the last Alex of today's critique of like, you know, doing it again and again. Like I'm making him do thumbnails again, right? Like that's the ticket. It's just constant repetition. Remember I was talking earlier about how humans are really good at just kind of like going with the flow, right? A lot of that has to do with our ability of just adapting to repetition. Like when you repeat something enough, your brain, even if you're not paying attention, will just get better at it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to rephrase what I've said. Basically, you can learn something without even knowing you're learning it. Okay? Because your conscious brain is what makes you know that you're alive and that you're doing a thing, being a human, right? But your brain is doing other stuff, whether you're paying attention to it or not. Right? Like, for instance, it's telling you to breathe, even though you're like, weren't thinking about it. Now you're thinking about it. You know how now you're all you can think about is breathing, right? It's like running and functioning your organs and doing all that jazz. You know, it's not just not sitting around. It's doing stuff, you know? And so like this is why I think like the saying of like we only use 10% of our brain came from. It came from this idea that like really just like our cognitive functions, right? But our brain is constantly at work, just not always thinking about ourselves. It's doing other stuff. So yeah, like you can see, like I did this painting. Seems pretty fleeting to me. But the reason why, like I said, is just straight up it's nothing that I can teach you to do in a day, you know, but I
Yeah.
can show you and explain to you how it works so that when you go about practicing it and you feel frustrated, that you can have that at least that confidence that it has nothing to do with anything that you're doing wrong. It's something that have to do with the lack of what you know. You need to make designing and painting subconscious is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you some tools on how to do this, how to practice. I already kind of flirted with some ideas, like, right, like some tests, some time limits, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are all great. But really just understanding fundamental stuff, like understanding how lighting works, and how perspective, how design, and then just constantly just doing these things until it becomes second nature to you. And I have a strong hypothesis that it would only take people somewhere around, I think it would only take people somewhere around 1,000 attempts, like real strong attempts. So like if you guys did like 1,000 thumbnails, right? I think by that time thumbnails will become closer to second nature to you. I don't think you'll be a master of them, but then you definitely won't feel uncomfortable doing them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it's somewhere close to 1,000. I think if you go any less than, or any more than 1,000, obviously you just compound that skill. But I think the closer you get to the 1,000, the sooner this will happen. Some people will be at a different pace. Like maybe for you, let's say it's only 100, and then you feel already there. But that's maybe because you already have some skill, right? So you're just kind of like ironing out the skill. So when I said it would only take me a month to learn like traditional medium, I'm assuming that I'm going to put in the work to get close to 1,000 attempts at doing traditional paintings. Right, I would buy like several like tubes of paint, specifically black and white paint, and then I would just paint on like a sketchbook every day. And I think it wouldn't be 1,000 attempts because I'm already a pretty skilled painter, and not just digitally. Like I understand traditional skills, I just don't know the mixing of things. I don't know how to get the right values out of my paints. But that wouldn't take me long. I'm almost positive it wouldn't take me too long. That's why I always talk about like compound learning. Like you want to learn things that if you keep learning them, they're only going to compound. Like you're just going to get crazy good, at a high interest rate,
Yeah.
So like me learning how to program like exponentially made me better at like being a concept artist, because now I'm like, I understand like what these mother effers are complaining about, and I call bullshit. They're just a bunch of complainers. Like I think it's not as like I've had programmers, make things seem so incredibly impossible to do, right? Like because I'm like, hey, we should do this, and you know how many weeks of programming that would take to do that, and I just took their word for it. Now I'm not trying to discount that they were wrong. I'm almost positive that they have some understanding of what they're saying, but as I learned programming, I realized that it can take some long time. But like some of the things that they were complaining about that I started doing, I was like, wait, I could have done that. Like, what are they talking about? It's not. It doesn't take that long. And I'm like, now you can't hide from me. And so, a great example of a programmer who's shown me that that's true is that I had one programmer. His name is Ray. And I would say something to him, and he'd be like, "All right," and he would go to his desk and do it. And I just at the time thought he was just a really like a badass programmer. Like he is, so, he still kind of is. But the reason why he is because like he just knew like it's a lazy thing to avoid these things. So like a way that I would imagine it would happen is that these programmers will structure the code in a way that's not. It's like if I were to say like make altercations to this, like this is all on one layer. You know what I mean? Like if I'm like looking to get some feedback on this and looking to make some changes, it would be like if I had this all in one layer and I finished it. You know, that's like, that would really turn me off if someone came and told me to make a lot of changes or do something that's like wildly different. And I think that's what happened. Like a lot of these programmers programmed hard code, which is like a lot of the structure of the code was super hard. And that means that the kinds of changes that I was asking for or suggesting would require complete capsizing of their original code. So that's why it would take them weeks. But a lot of programmers think this way. They think a little too structured, and they create too, like, they create these types of structures that are not very, easy to change. I think that's what's happening with YouTube. I think YouTube is falling into that same trap. That's why people are like, come on, YouTube, get your act together. But like their algorithms must have been like, it's not as simple as people may think it is. It doesn't matter if you have all the resources in the world. If your infrastructure of your software or hardware or whatever is built on a very specific paradigm, and what people are suggesting to you, even if it's a great idea, would change the paradigm, that's incredibly hard to do. Not like the idea of like, oh yeah, no, just add this extra feature. Intuitively, it seems easy, but like I said, if it's on the backbones of something crazy like infrastructure, yeah, I can imagine why people make these choices. But that's why I also revert back to the idea of we'll just make those changes, change the paradigm. You effed up. You made a bad design choice. You know, you're just gonna have to do it, right?
Yeah, Facebook did something similar to like that because they switched their entire website to React. You know, it's built on like PHP. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, just gotta move with the times, or you're gonna be left behind. Like, if you're the person who went and bought 1,000 horses the day the automobile was invented, that's your fault. You know, I'm gonna start a transportation company of horses, and then they just built a car. You effed up. So getting back to kind of like the art of all this is what I'm trying to get at is, you know, when you learn fundamental skills, it compounds everything. Okay. So that's why it's really important to learn like a lot of this, like anatomy and perspective, all that stuff. So like I said, you start with timers, start with small tests, challenge yourself all the time, and then you'll get better and better at it. There's nothing wrong with using lines, by the way. Like, it's not like to say that you can't be fast and efficient with lines. You could probably invent a method that incorporates your original process. I've seen this happen plenty of times as well.
Ramon Nunez is one of my biggest influences there.
Yeah. So just take a look at what they're doing and seeing if you can find a parallel, you know? And then like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think it's really helpful to basically, you know, learn from multiple different instructors and artists that have multiple different processes.
Yeah.
You know, because it really will invent yours. Like my work is just a product of all my favorite artists, you know?
Yeah.
So was that a little bit helpful?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
No,
yeah,
that was good.
Yeah, it's a hard one, man. I get it. Because on one hand, I get like you want like some sort of answer that would give you some really like, oh, like, I mean, I kind of already, like you suggested earlier, like I already kind of gave you some hint of this, right? Where you're just like, oh man, like I never thought about like skipping a step. But the you know, the follow-up question is like, well, how does that work? And the whole skipping a step is like, there is no skipping a step. Yeah. Like I took every step. And so I just know where I'm going. You know, it's like, I know that this is a shortcut because I've tried every other route. And I know that this is the shortest. You know what I mean? And so it's not like I just luckily stumbled upon some sort of secret route, right? No, it's completely manufactured, right? And knowing that is a little bit helpful for some people because at least lets them know that they're on the right path by studying fundamental skills. Like they intuitively knew that they should be doing that, right? Like it's like eat your art vegetables kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know. But it just helps to hear someone say, "Yeah, it's definitely that," and it really is. Yeah, and I always like to call it art vegetables.
This guy kind of looks like a vegetable.
Yeah, I know. There's another way of thinking about it is like if I tell you to do 100 push-ups, that'll make you do more push-ups. You still have to do the push-ups, and so
Yes.
it's pretty much the same thing.
Got it.
Cool beans. Any other questions?
Yeah, actually, I remember at some point you were trying to learn environments. Did you ever go follow through with that, or was that just like a?
Just in the beginning, mostly because people told me I had to. I didn't know any better. And then as I started realizing, it's like, wait, there's people that just do characters. There's not like this kind of super generalistic job that exists. Like almost all of the people who are good at what they do are good at that one thing, at least they're like the best at it. Very rarely will you find the people who are good at multiple things at the same level, right? But even them are still not the best potentially at this very specific thing,
Yeah,
like someone. Oh, so go ahead.
I was just curious if you had any any interest in it personally.
The only interest I have now is just for my own video games.
Okay.
Right. But like, I'm not so bad at environments that I can't do it on my own right now. Like I can probably do it, especially the way that I've been doing platforming games. Like if it's all entirely platform based, which is like isometric 2D, like side view, that's like even easier because I don't have to worry about perspective. I just focus only on design, and I can totally do that.
Okay.
But I don't have any interest, not because I don't like environments. I actually love looking at good environments and stuff like that. I just, whenever I put paper to pencil, this is the kind of stuff that I draw.
Right on.
And
Okay.
you gotta speak to your strengths, right? Like I know that I like to be technically good at stuff, and I like to do things that challenge that technicality. And so like things of like super organic forms and weird abstract characters is that thing.
I remember I was looking at some of your stuff. I can't remember. You might have done it for like a Silent Hill game or something, or for some sort of horror game. And I was like, this belongs in a Silent Hill game. Like, why is this not in there?
Nobody's hired me. Actually, there's I did stuff for I think it's called Edge of Nowhere game. It was a VR game. I did like pretty much the majority of the monster designs in that. And that was pretty much like that. It was really fun. I loved it. It's a good fit. Like the process was so easy. Like I would just draw like a couple of sketches and they're like, cool. It'd like be like a week. I would just design a full character and it'd be done. But dude, to be clear, like Insomniac is like they're a game company, man. Like they know what the hell they're doing. They're like really good at making games. And it's great to see that. Like it's really fun to work with those guys.
Right on. Okay.
Hey Anthony.
Yeah, what's up?
What do you think's like the best way to practice anatomy? Like, do you think you should go like compartmentalize and say, I'm gonna learn like the torso and the head, or do you think you should just try to learn like the full body as it regards to, like character design?
I think doing compartments is better. And then like always going back to see how the full body, so you can get context. But yeah, I personally think laser focus is one of the best strategies to learning anything. So for instance, if you don't know anatomy, instead of like doing the whole body, why don't you start with something small, like the torso? And then once you understand the torso, then move on to something small again, and then move on to something else, And then once you have a good grasp of all that, then try to put it all together. But at that time, you would have a stronger understanding of all of them independently. And now you're just trying to figure out how they fit together. It's not impossible to do it the other way, where you just learn on a more general level. but it's just more frustrating because there's so much, there's so many missing pieces to the puzzle. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's just incredibly, there's just so many pieces missing,
Right.
you know, that like it feels really overwhelming to try to tackle.
Interesting. So do you think like your knowledge of like insertion point, like I know I objectively know that it like 100% helps. But, like, do you think are you actively thinking like, okay, I know that the the pectoralis attaches here and whatever when you're drawing?
Yeah, I do.
That's cool.
you can do it too. It's not actually that kind of
I
stuff.
know.
Like basic bone attachment is actually really isn't that complicated. It's actually really easy to learn very quickly. But it's like understanding it on a more subtle level and nuance. So that's what's really challenging. Yeah, but like the pecs are attached to the clavicle and to the humerus and to the sternum and to the base of the rib cage. So if you just know that, then you'll just draw that. If you don't know that, then you'll keep drawing square pecs.
Yeah.
Because you have no idea what the fuck is going on. You just basically have like a barrel, and then you're like pecs and pecs. And so when then like someone's arm is up, you don't realize that all should go together because it's connected to the humerus, which is right here. So it actually makes this shape. Right?
Right.
If you don't know that, then you're not going to draw it.
Right. Is there any reference like or anybody you've like
Oh my
listened
god, dude! There's so
No,
much
no.
reference, dude. Like if there was anything that I would say is the easiest thing to find knowledge on is anatomy. Human anatomy has been referenced since like the Renaissance, dude.
Right, but I mean, like, you know how like Loomis has his method. Is there one method you prefer? Like
No.
learning?
There's just all of them. Remember how I said earlier? That humans, like we're really good at just like just piggybacking. We don't really question much stuff, right? So this is one of those things where you should just do that. Like you should just go online and just find somebody and just start going, and then you will naturally find the anatomy artist that speaks to you. But for me to just tell you would be disingenuous as an instructor, because one or two things will happen, or maybe multiple things, but two on the spectrum of things that could happen. One is that you do it, you follow my instruction, and it works perfectly for you, right?
Right.
Two, it doesn't, and you're now even more confused than ever, and you're more insecure because, hey, it worked for AJ. Why isn't it working for me? Because there's a few factors. Like you might not be at that level. That person might not speak to your intuition about what you think anatomy could be, right? But most likely you just don't know. Like you're just so far like removed, like you don't see the things that I might have saw, right? Like I might be giving you an artist that made sense to me after I've already put in 2 years of anatomy, right? And then I look at this artist now and I'm like, yeah, this artist is clearly the best, but is he? Or was I ready to see that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And so my advice is, generally speaking, you should just start off just basic stuff, okay? My friend who's slowly becoming an artist, he's going from zero to hero, right? Like he had no skill whatsoever as an artist, right? I'm trying to teach him, and I'm engulfed with joy watching him naturally find the kinds of artists that speak to his weaknesses, you know?
Yeah.
Like I didn't tell him like you should look at this specific dude. I just said just look, and then he's starting to find people. I'm like, oh yeah, that person's great. He's like, oh, I love the way he breaks down this and that and that and this. And I was like, oh, you think that person's great? Check out this person. See how that's a lot different. That's a different question now, right?
Yeah.
Instead of asking where to start, he's asking me, do you have any more examples of this specific dude, right? Because this dude speaks to me.
Right.
And that's a lot easier. That's a lot easier answer for me to give, because I'm like, yeah, totally. You know, because that is only going to compound your lessons. But if I just start showing you like John Watkiss and like you have no understanding, or Bridgman or Bogart, right? Like you're just like, what's going on? You know? But I learned a lot from them. That's not helpful as a teacher to give to a student. I'm not you and you're not me. And so, but what I know is true is that you should just get started. Don't worry about the details. Don't worry about what color shoelaces you're wearing when you're going to the foot race. You know what I mean? Just run.
Yeah.
Just, can you finish the mile first? Right? And then we'll worry about the shoelaces. You know? And so my advice to you to get started is, just like collect a Pinterest anatomy stuff and just get into it. Just do it. And you'll start to understand what I'm saying. You'll really will understand. And then if you find an artist, if you already have one right now that you think is really good, that you're feeling like you really understand a lot when they're explaining stuff to you, then let me know. I can try to share more artwork. Oh, what'd you say?
It's Adam Duff.
Adam Duff. I don't think I even know that person. Let me see. Adam Duff.
He's my. I'm doing his mentorship right after yours, and he actually is the person who recommended me to you.
Yeah, he's great. But where's his anatomy?
He sent me a bunch of videos that are like his personal course for like anatomy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Super nice dude.
So you should probably look at Brahm. You know Brahm?
Brahm.
Brahm, no.
Yeah, I think Brahm is better in terms of like really getting a strong understanding of anatomy.
Okay.
Well, that's unfair. Brahm's better than all of us.
Yeah, that's true. Brahm is better than me. And so like start with Brahm, and then I would say go move on to Phil Hale. Phil Hale's pretty good too.
I'm writing it.
I'll write it down for you, dude. Brahm, Phil Hale, Jeremy Geddes, and then there's another one, Roberto Ferry. These are pretty good places to start. See, that's much easier.
So.
And then the kind of people that would teach you how to reach this type of skill would probably be John Watkiss. So just type in John Watkiss anatomy. Rest in peace. He passed away too early. There you go. That's a good start.
Thank you.
Oh, dude. I've had nearly thousands of references for anatomy, and I have owned upwards of 17 anatomy books. So when I'm telling you that like you need to learn anatomy, I'm not saying there's like a place. I'm saying learn anatomy. Okay, like you just gotta buckle down and just learn it. Learn it, dude.
Do you think? I mean, I know anatomy is like a pillar of like what makes a good artist, but do you
a character artist?
Character art. Like
because you can be an environment artist. Sorry to interrupt. You can be an environmentalist with no anatomy skills.
Right. But what do you think's like the big differentiator from like people at like your level? Is it their anatomy? Is their lighting? What's like the thing?
Yeah, it's our fundamentals. I have more fundamentals than most people. I have better understanding of perspective with characters, anatomy, proportions, as well as materials. It's all of it. It's not just one thing. Like when you look at my work compared to yours, for instance, those are the things that separates us. It's not anything else, right? And so all I'm trying to do, right, is to show you that that's true. Like I'm not better than you. I just have I have a head start.
Right.
Okay. And once you do it, then you'll be better than me. It's just how it works. I have students who are better than me, and I'm like, damn it.
Come Tuesday, my anatomy's gonna be fucking crazy, man.
Huh?
Come Tuesday, my anatomy's gonna be freaking crazy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna know all this shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of room to understand and learn anatomy, my friends. Like you gotta, like, I'm trying to tell you, like, it's one of those things, like it's one of those things that people can tell that it's objectively hard to do, and that's why people who do it are the ones that get jobs. Okay?
Right.
It's really simple. Like, I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking about a lot of this kind of, like, the stuff that we were a little bit, like, we kind of hinted on it a bit earlier this class, right? About, like, this idea of agenda, like hiring people just because of whatever they are versus what they can provide. And I was talking to this person, and she was convinced that everything was against her, like all these odds. And I told her, like, look, I don't deny that there might be things that are just harder for you, because there are things that are harder for other people. I gave her examples of people who live overseas trying to work in America, right? It's even harder now, okay? But I said, but then how do they get it? How did they get there? You think it's just blind luck, right? And I did something for her that I don't think anyone else did. I put her at work face to face against someone that did the same kind of work as hers, but was working, right?
Yeah.
And I said, do you really believe that this person got there because of anything else than their work? And she's like, well, no, of course not. And I said, well, if you had the choice to hire yourself or this artist, who would you hire? And I think that was the moment that she woke up, right? She was just like, oh my gosh, you know? And she's like, of course, like you would hire them. And she went on to say and talk to me about stuff like, well, you don't get it. You're already established, right? And I told her, well, how do you think I got established? Do you really believe that there's some sort of circumstance in which I just woke up and just started working and started becoming an incredibly popular artist amongst the industry? He's like, what universe are you living in? And so you have to understand that all of the things that you're talking about and projecting onto the world are just excuses and your insecurities. And let me tell you something. There's nothing wrong with having excuses, and there's nothing wrong with having insecurities. There's only something wrong if you keep complaining about your excuses and you keep complaining about your insecurities, because that means you don't care to change it. And that's a problem. To me personally, I don't mind if you are complacent or you're content with what you have. You're happy with your failures, your shortcomings. You're happy with the circumstances in which you live. I don't want to take that from you. Everyone else's success is different from one another, right? People's happinesses are determined differently. Some people want to work on, like, on a big epic project, doing all this kind of crazy stuff and be names on every movie, on every video game. Other people just want to work at one studio and just do paintings and just go play volleyball on the weekends, do barbecues with their friends,
Yeah.
That brings them happiness. I'm not going to take that away from people. Like, there's a really great passage I'll kind of talk about, like a conundrum that I'll give you guys. But basically, I was explaining to her this, right? And I've seen this framing in all shapes and sizes from all types of people. It's all the same. It's coming from it's all rooted in the same things: insecurities and excuses. But there's a lot of negative stigma against having excuses. People say "suck it up" kind of attitude. I think that's also wrong. That's overcorrecting the problem, right? I think you could totally comfort somebody within their excuses to help them naturally get out of it, versus just straight up tell them to suck it up, right? Like, you should still tell them that at some level, but the point is that you could be a lot more empathetic, right? Like, I understand some people work a lot, so I'm empathetic to that. So let me give you examples of friends of mine who worked a lot and how they got out of it, right? I know some people have family issues. So, well, I have people that I know who had family issues. Let me give you examples of that so you can get out of it, right? And so if you really want to know what's the difference, right? That's what it is. It really is that I put in the work, and so I've gotten to the position that I'm in today.
Yeah.
And because I know this, I know that most people can get through this too. And I've met too many artists in my lifetime to believe anything else. I've met too many people with similar stories or even worse circumstances, and they somehow got out. This is not like winning the lottery, guys, okay? It's not like something really incredibly challenging that is nearly impossible to achieve. Being a concept artist is completely within your grasp, okay? At least for now. There might be a time where that might not be true, but right now it's not. It's totally true that you guys can all be working in the industry, okay? There's not a lot of jobs, so you got to be amongst the best. And if you are, you're going to be the ones that's taking those few jobs. This is how it rolls. And by the way, there's more jobs being made because more people are becoming indie and having money, right? And so it's actually a fascinating thing because people are also creating their own content, right, with like Patreon and YouTube. So there's alternative ways to do this for a living. You just got to bring value somehow. That's all. It kind of looks like.
Totally random, but do you like Sam Harris?
Yeah. Sam, he's like one of those. Well, they refer to him like the dark web intellectuals, right? Because he has a lot of controversial ideas. Yeah, I think he's one of the better ones, actually. I think he has a lot of reasonable, rational arguments. Some arguments I strongly disagree with, but he's not crazy.
No, he's not crazy.
Yeah, some people would like to think that he's crazy, but just because they don't agree with him. But that's no way of living your life. Not everybody will agree with you on everything.
You just talk very similar to him. It's interesting. He's like one of my favorite like modern philosophers.
Yeah. He like the kinds of things that that I like that he talks about specifically is like a lot of the neuroscience stuff, because that's what he does for a living. That's like he's really good at that. Like he's very smart. So that kind of stuff makes sense to me. The only issues that I think he's actually starting to come around to it too, is his like sensibilities around like the Muslim religion. It's really controversial, but if you really listen to him, it's clear to me that he's not like Islamic phobe. He's not racist. He's just trying to like point out like some statistical truths, but he's just using them in a way that sounds and feels racist, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not really helpful. And like for instance, like I was talking to somebody about this. Like someone was saying, like because I get stopped at airlines a lot, remember when I was in Turkish airport, like I get stopped a lot, right? Especially if I don't shave my beard. And yeah, you laugh because it's just reality, right? And I was talking to somebody and she was just like, don't you hate that? Like, don't you feel offended? I was like, well, not really, because I just go through it and then it's just like a thing. I get it. Like if I'm looking for, what could potentially be some sort of person that could be a terrorist of some kind, right? Like the chances of you, a short white woman, getting stopped versus someone like me, a tall dark man with a beard, there's chances I'm going to get stopped, right? People aren't stupid. How many women terrorists do you know? Right? Like I understand that's kind of like the root of his argument, right? Like there's a lot of I think Hitchens does it better when he talks about the same argument, because he said he would also use reference of like the past, like how Catholics, we can look back. I mean, now it's like we can look at them now again because of all the freaking priest rapes, right? Like it's all resurfacing. But like, anyways, it's just like a statistical anomaly. It's not. You just got to look at the numbers and then say, okay, well, what's the ultimate problem here, right? And so then, the solution isn't to overcorrect and then just assume that all Muslims are terrorists. That's obviously, because if we were to look at it on that statistical level, it is incredibly small, right? Because they're billions of them, right? And so for you to say that there's a high, like, no, it's understandable why profiling exists. Like, I don't understand why people don't get it. If I'm afraid of if I'm in America and I'm thinking somebody's going to come in and shoot me and a bunch of people, like, let's say at a movie theater, it's most likely something like a young white man that's going to scare me, right?
Yeah.
Because that's statistically how it is. It's not that I'm like, oh, every white man that I see now, I better like be careful. Because that, again, if you look at it on the spectrum of like the majority, the larger number, it's just not statistically true to just assume that all white men are freaking crazy serial murderers. It's just not how it is. But we have to understand that there's something going on within that specific culture, right? That are not raising these kids right. They are getting access to weapons at a very like a small rate or a fast rate or easier rate. We need to do something about that, right? Like there's clearly a problem here, and we need to look at it honestly, versus just kind of being afraid of because we're bringing in people's ethnicity into it. It's just like it doesn't have to be about that, but we can't also ignore it. And so that's the things that, like I said, like I listen to what he says. I get like what he's trying to get at. But I think what it is, is that he's like incredibly intellectual, right?
Yeah.
Or at least he's
yeah, he's like that like he appeals to like people who like debate in philosophy frequently versus like,
some people that are willing to like understand that he's not like trying to say anything controversial. He's just like pointing to a problem, and then like he's like looking for a debate, and then the kinds of people that read this, they don't want to debate, or like, no, you're straight up racist, and then that's no way.
Bill Maher.
That was a bad one. That was really bad because people then just went off and just totally ignored what he was trying to say. Yeah, I agree. Like, again, I actually disagree with his argument, but the way you beat him in the argument is by pointing out what I was just saying, right? Like, we got to look at the macro. Like, it's statistically insignificant. Like, there's like the same thing with the immigration laws, right? People will always say, "Oh, there's like a 40% federal crime." Well, that's the federal. Like, the federal. The FBI's job is to find like illegal immigrants, specifically the drug cartel, right? So it makes sense to me that there's going to be a higher percentage there, right? But then when you do it to the overall population, then that number becomes dramatically smaller, right? And it's really convenient to ignore that number when you're conservative, and then it's also really convenient to ignore the other number, the federal number, when you're a liberal, and that's why it bothers me. It's like, why can't we look at both and look at like a meta-analysis and try to figure out the ultimate problem here, instead of just doing blanket statements and then just calling everybody idiots and racists and bigots. This is my biggest pet peeve in the last 2 years. Nobody's listening to each other. With your all right. Well, I don't want to actually get into it too much because we're in the middle of our class. I know I kind of ranted for a little bit, but just wrap it up, and then we'll move on to one more or two more questions. Sorry, guys. So go ahead and finish your quick story.
Saying, like, my mother is like, I grew up in like a really small Texas town, and like they're like big, like great people. But I told her I wasn't gonna vote. I wasn't gonna vote for Ted Cruz because I think he's like bought and paid for, and she thought that was like the craziest thing ever. What? Just because like I know. I was like, no, like, how do you not think that? But like she said like a bunch of blanket statements. It's just really funny.
Yeah. So we'll just end it on that. I have stuff to say on that, but this is not the time and place. Anyone else have any questions? Any other questions or any comments? Nothing off the table. Yeah, this guy reminds me of like Doom. I feel like I should give him teeth. I give teeth to everything though. Yeah, I'll give him teeth. I'll take one more question, then I'm gonna get going. This is your chance. Someone eating? How dare you?
I'm making emergency.
Oh, okay, right on.
AJ.
Yeah, what's up, dude?
I'm a little bit curious about how rim light works, actually.
Oh, okay, cool. I was gonna put on this guy, but I like the more classical painting feel it has, so I just avoided it. But a rim light is basically like it traces the forms of your character, and the key word here is form. Okay, because that's all it's doing. So basically, if you had like a character here and you had a light here, it's just the lights like hitting the back of your character. And what people would tend to do is they'll move like the light just a little bit to like the left or the right. So then it'll be like this, but the camera is still facing here. So we get a little bit of this like rim light. You see that? And so knowing that whenever you do rim lights, this is the common mistake that people make. So they'll just trace, right? So I say it's about tracing the form. So if you think about it, if the light's coming from behind this character, so this would be lit like this. You see how like that comes in a little bit? And then this. So it's not like a perfect straight line. And then right here, you can see that like this would overlap that line. And then we can do another one in here. And then we can do maybe like wrinkles and what have you. You see that? And so it's about like finding what would actually be hit by the light so you can put it in. See that? And it works best if you have like a relatively dark environment. Yeah, that's it though. Rim light's not too complicated, but it definitely is a great tool to like break out the silhouette of your character from like a darker environment or a mid-tone environment, kind of like the one I'm dealing with right now. Brad Rigney does a really good job with that. I usually like to look at his stuff. He's like really good at rim lighting. Yeah. He does it all the time. It doesn't even feel like rim lighting. It just feels like just another set of lights. He moves it in even further around the corner, but it's really good. And it's like colored too. Anyway. Yeah, I'm almost done. I'm actually going to wrap it up right now. Wait, hold on, guys. One second. All right, I'm back. Yeah, I'm going to close up the class now. We're running a little later. Anyways, guys, I appreciate all the hard work and all the dedication thus far. You guys are kicking butt. Keep at it. I'll talk to you guys next week. Now, make sure to hang out with each other, give each other advice. Don't be strangers. Make friends, man. And with that, peace out. And have a good night, y'all.
Yeah, see ya.
Thank you.
And don't get too political. That's how you ruin friendships. All right, see you guys later. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.